4B, to consider matters involving or affecting the purchase, sale, or lease of property, advanced construction planning, the investment of public funds, or other matters involving commercial competition, which, if made public, might adversely affect the financial or other interests of the county commission. Mr. Raymond, did you have something? What do we?
Well, I think you would have you need a motion and a second, and then you need to vote to go into executive session. If you want me to speak to anything relating to that,
No, not at this time.
I guess what I don't understand is why we're going into executive session.
so we would be discussing
Tommy, who you represent?
the county commission.
Okay, if you come up here with who the we is. So the,
We being the county commission.
so the county commission needs to talk to itself in executive session. Is that what you're saying?
It depends on how cute we're gonna get with this, I guess.
I'm just trying to, it's not very often the county commission has to go into executive session for itself. Is that?
Well, who scheduled the meeting? You did it.
Nope.
You scheduled it.
Nope.
Then you put this together.
Nope.
Had questions from Tommy and asked for a work session.
I did not schedule this meeting today.
You asked Susan and I about our schedule last meeting. Because you said to Susan. what was
Patty,
scheduled.
I asked for a work session on,
Well, let's
Parks and
handle the
Rec.
matter. That's not.
Madam President, may I say something, with your permission? You know, guys, we're all the county government, and we're supposed to be working together. And we gotta work together whether we want to or not. This is a very important project. Look at the things we've done up here in the past decade. And this is all part of it. So, Dave, Commissioner, the only thing I'm asking is that, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's aspects of this that need to be in the executive session because you're talking about competitive issues regarding the leasing and sale of land and businesses coming in, just like we do at the airport all the time. And we can't discuss those things. And when we have, you know, the Economic Development Corporation come in, they can't discuss deals that are in progress. So parts of it have to be in executive session. So, you know, what I would suggest is that we get, you know, that we put our big boy and girl pants on and have a very calm and relaxed session here so that you can understand what's going on, because this is critical stuff, guys. This is stuff that's been going on for years and years here, and we're really at a crossroads, and we want to work together, regardless of who's sitting in these seats, and make it work for the whole county, because this is what's creating jobs. This is part of our driver. This is part of the airport driver, Dave, that you know so well and have been such a big part of, and we've got to work together and stay together and not let other issues creep into this. That Tom Amon, you know, I picked Tom Amon when I was on the commission because you know why? He crosses every T, dots every I. And that's why we got to have him. If he thinks it's got to be an executive session, then Commissioner Hinkle, I think that we should consider that because we can't risk losing things to some other area close by or some other state. So let's do this together. I think it's going to work out great for everybody. Let's just take that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator.
I understand going into executive session for Charles Pointe. If Charles Pointe's here to represent itself and explain to us what they'd like to do. That's all I'm here to listen to. And for any recommendations that our attorney makes, whether or not we should go forward with it. I'm not here to hear your suggestions for Charles Pointe. But you represent us.
All right, well, let me ask you this. I was planning to go through some background and lay some foundational type things for the discussion. But if you all don't want to hear that or don't feel like that's necessary, then we could get directly to hearing from Genesis Partners if that's what the commission wants. But if the commission wants some factual foundation, I'm happy to do that as well. So it would be up to you all as to how you want to handle that.
The reason it had to be an executive session.
A lot of this would not have to be an executive session. Depends on,
I understand Mr. Court's position on it being an executive session. I don't understand anything from, on our side, everything that we do here is public, same way for the, I guess, the EODD, which you're here to represent, Michael.
Yeah, Trey, I'm the chairman of the EODD, Mr. Commissioner. And I think what Tom's trying to say is some of this is going to require executive session factually, some of it is not. I think the important thing for the commission to remember, if I can just throw this in, is that, whatever bonds the TIF district, whether it's the property tax TIF district or the excise tax TIF district is issued, are not an obligation of this county or its taxpayers.
Correct.
That there's a dedicated revenue stream that we dedicated, no matter what happens, that pays back these bonds. And I think these guys have come up with a great opportunity here to do a lot more with that. So I think the question for you all is, do you want to hear the factual stuff that is competitive and confidential, along with the other information that Mr. Raymond has? Or do you just want him to give you the stuff that is not
I mean, I think
competitive?
that we can get the history back, the background. And then if you believe that there's something we need to go into executive session about, then we go into executive session. That's my view.
okay,
That's just, I mean,
is Commissioner Treecost participating as well? Okay, all right,
He sits wherever he wants.
okay. Commissioner Hinkle, what's your feeling on that?
Again, I'll tell you where I'm at, Tommy. I'm a little confused. Okay. And I'm gonna be honest with you. You worked at some point a while back, and your firm, including you, went to Charleston to change the TIF law. And worked with Charleston.
Well, for everybody.
His bill said Charleston.
Oh,
So I'm sitting here today, just bear with me. I'm trying to understand. You're here to represent us. So when you come to me and say you've worked out this financial dealings with Charles Point and have an answer to it, has this happened since we hired you, or has this happened before we hired you?
I'm not coming to you saying that I've worked out financial dealings with Charles Point. I'm coming to you with information and different things for the commission to consider as to whether the commission wants to pursue different options with respect to bonds that are outstanding and pending development. This is what I'm coming to present is more, as I said before, laying the factual foundation so that you guys understand the different factors and what you need to consider going forward. That's my only reason for being here. As far as
then I'm ready to hear what you have to say.
okay.
And I don't expect you to reveal anything that affects Mr. Corton or Charles Point in any financial way.
And I was not involved in prior lobbying efforts, and my firm was not involved in prior lobbying efforts. Yes, there is a related entity to our firm that is I don't know, a lobbying group that was engaged by Genesis to do some lobbying work in Charleston. I was not involved in that work other than to look at some different legal language and different bill options. And I was not involved in lobbying anybody for that. I was doing some legal analysis relating to potential options to try to create opportunities for the commission to be in a better position to restructure these bonds. And so, yeah, I've got a bill. You can look through the bill.
What's the rip?
And I'm not involved in lobbying work. I'm not a lobbyist. There were people involved in that. Yes. So I've got some basic information to go over here. The intent of the discussion is to discuss potential, we've got outstanding property tax and excise tax bonds. So the intent of this discussion is to discuss what those bonds are, where they stand, and what potential options there may be going forward with respect to those bonds. Okay? And as a part of that, it also involves ongoing development at Charles Pointe, because it's that development that then creates the revenues that repay the bonds. So it's kind of all tied together. So that's why we'll be mentioning Genesis Partners. They're the developer for both districts. So they are involved in bringing the development opportunities into the district, which then creates the ability to repay the bonds. So that's why it's all kind of tied together. Another part of this, I would say, would be, what is going on at Charles Pointe is, it's kind of all tied together with the airport, and I would say White Oaks, the FBI center, the hospital. I mean, this I-79, 279 corridor, that's where a lot of the development has been going on for the last 10, 15 years in the county. And so it all is sort of interrelated. So that's kind of a part of this discussion as well. So on the property tax side, there's two series of bonds outstanding from 2008. There's 4.8 million that was issued for senior bonds. They have a first position on all the tax increment revenues. I could go into different things that were financed from those bonds if you care to hear that. Otherwise, I can skip through that. And you have the 2008 B bonds, which have a subordinate lien on the revenues and are also secured by Community Enhancement District assessments. Those bonds were issued in the amount of $28,690,000. I've got detail here as to what that was spent on if you guys end up wanting to hear that. So where those bonds stand, the 2008 A bonds, they're the smaller issue. Those payments have always been current and continue to be current. The 2008 B bonds, so going into this year, so the current tax year, the TIF revenues are approximately $1 million. The debt service on the A bonds is approximately $500,000. The debt service on the B bonds is approximately $2.8 million. So roughly the 2008 bonds are about $2.3 million short of available tax increment revenues to pay debt service on the bonds. Okay. So the way those bonds are set up, that difference then comes from CED assessment, Community Enhancement District assessments. And those assessments are imposed on basically the undeveloped property at Charles Pointe. So that property is primarily owned by the developer and its affiliates, individuals and entities. Coming into the current balances on the B bonds, we're still at that $28,145,000 on the B bonds. We've got unpaid accrued interest through December 1, basically today, of $6.8 million. And we've got unpaid principal from 2018 through 21 of about $3.3 million. Because of that, we have, going back to 2017, basically an agreement with the bondholders forbearance arrangement where they agree that to defer collection of these CED assessments from year to year, to allow the developer time and an opportunity to attract additional investment, private development into Charles Pointe to build the tax base so that there's less reliance on the CED assessments and more reliance on the tax increment revenues, which is really the intent of the original financing. So those forbearances have continued from 2017 and continue through this year. And then, once we get through the end of this tax year, those prior taxes are going to come due. And so the bondholders have asked the developer to work on a solution, cooperatively with the bondholders to restructure the bonds, to put them on a more solid, permanent foundation, rather than these continuing forbearances and this buildup of the CED assessments. So they're asking for sort of a comprehensive solution, so that we can get the bonds on solid footing going forward. So that's what's we're working on now, and that's why the county engaged Stiefel and us, Steptoe and Johnson, and MuniCap to look at where things are now and try to put together some different proposals and structure a term sheet with the bondholders to get this on more solid, permanent footing. So what's being looked at for the restructure is basically we're in a lower interest rate environment than we have been for years, as you all probably well know. The types of bond funds that own these high yield type investments, that's been an active market. So that's been a good market for the last year and a half or so. So that creates a kind of a favorable environment actually with this timing to restructure these bonds. So part of that is what as being, one option here is to restructure these bonds in a way that you take all the existing development that's occurred since 2008 and the additional revenues that that's generating, and you sort of resize those senior bonds so that they're supported by all the existing tax increment revenues. And then there could be a place to have another bond that's supported by sort of ongoing development that is in the hopper and could come to fruition within the next couple of years, generate revenues to support those bonds. So those two bonds would basically be on very good footing. That then reduces the need for the CED assessments because all that development is then being captured and put into those two series of bonds. And then you could, if there's a residuary balance, you could then look at putting that into, let's say, a C bond or a further subordinated bond where that may or may not be secured by CED assessments. There could be different ways to address that, and that's part of what will be discussed. But there could be an opportunity to remove the assessments, which has been this ongoing sort of problem for the county and the developer to deal with, or just significantly reduce the annual amount of those assessments that we're having to, continue to forbear, and Genesis is having to pay every year. So that's sort of the goals going into a possible restructuring that would be studied by the professionals involved to see what kind of solution could be put together there. The excise tax bonds, there are three series of bonds there that were issued in 2019. 36,500,000 A bonds, 12.2 million B bonds, and then 17.6 million C bonds. The A and B bonds are really the ones primarily at issue. The C bonds are a placement with the developer. They are basically a reimbursement mechanism to them for additional investments that they make at Charles Pointe. But those bonds, if there's not payment on those bonds, there's no default or any adverse situation for the district or the county. So we're primarily looking at that A and B bond. And those bonds were issued to finance the site development of what is called Charles Pointe Crossing. So about 28.1 million of that was used for Charles Pointe Crossing. And that was to, if you go up to the top of 279, that's what you see to the right of Charles Pointe. That hillside has been lowered, creating about 67 acres of pad-ready development, and also the infrastructure that's needed for that to create a development opportunity there. Now, that was based primarily on Menard, who has an agreement to build in Charles Pointe, and the debt service on those A and B bonds would be primarily carried by Menard. So there was capitalized interest that was structured into those bonds that would pay the interest through June 1 of 21. So those bonds were current through June 1 of 21. Well, Menard was to be opened in now basically the spring or summer of this year, and generating revenues to then pay the debt service on December 1 of this year, today. Due to COVID, Menard stopped its construction activities of a new construction of anything that had not already started when COVID hit. And so at least I'm told, and developers told, that they have not resume those activities, but they do plan to start on the Menard facility at Charles Pointe Crossing in the spring of 21. So 22, sorry, 22. So what really needs to happen there is, we don't have revenue because Menard hasn't opened. We don't have revenues to make the December 1 payments on the bonds. So, we've had discussions. Genesis and I, as counsel for the county commission, have had discussions with the bondholders about how to address the situation. And there are different things that could be done there. One is that there are construction contingency funds that remain from the 2019 bonds, about 1.5 million, that will probably not be needed. Or at least some significant portion of those funds won't be needed. So some of that money could be used to continue to pay the interest on the bonds until we get Menard and some of this other development open to Charles Pointe Crossing. Or they could do things with adding interest to principal until that occurs, or other alternatives they might suggest. But the idea here is we've got to continue to pay, we've got to put a mechanism in place to continue to pay the interest on those bonds until Menard and the other development at Charles Pointe Crossing opens, to then be able to pay that debt service. So that's primarily what's being looked at there. The other thing is there is an additional development opportunity that has arisen for Genesis Partners at Charles Pointe that would involve a new tenant that would be potentially a very significant excise tax or sales tax generating firm for the district that would really has a lot of potential. And so one additional thing to look at here is working with the bondholders to create some additional funds from the sales tax TIF to pay for the site work that would be necessary to locate this firm in the district. And so that's another aspect to be considered by the commission with respect to that. So that's just the foundation I wanted to go through. And if you guys want to hear from Genesis Partners on any of the ongoing development or other questions that you may have, and that would be things that they could go into at this time. Or if you have questions with respect to, or any of you have questions with respect to what I just went over.
I might have missed, what's the CED assessment total right now?
It is, I have that number here. It is 10.3 million. 8 million of that represents prior assessments from 17 through 20, and then 2.3 million of that represents 2021.
Make the motion to go into executive session to hear from Genesis Partners.
Motion's been made to go into executive session to hear from Genesis Partners.
Pursuant to West Virginia Code 6984B9,
Thank you.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Probably would be easier if we stayed here and. Sorry.
As long as we make sure to turn the top 30 to leave it. Then Reese can
Good job.
make a motion to go back in session.
Motion's been made to go back into regular session. There's not any action to be taken. We're
No
looking at
action
that.
taken in executive session.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Move to table agenda item number 2 and go to agenda item number 3.
Motion's been made to table item 2 and go to item 3. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No.
Projector, I hope.
Want to go into executive session on number 2, or how do you want to handle this? Dustin?
Yeah, I don't need this extension. Laura?
I believe we've all separately received and seen this document, just seeing exactly what our dispatchers are starting out at. Just trying to get an idea of the feel for where they should be for starting out. I think we all can agree that they need to get an increase. Their job is more deserving than what they start out making.
Madam President, I shared with the county administrator that I think that they should start out at 38. I think they should, and then after their grace period, then that's, let's talk that up for discussion. But I think a good starting point, we're having a hard time getting people to fill the positions, and it's too important to our citizens and to the men and women that serve the citizens that are dispatched on a every minute on the hour within our system. So that's my opinion. I don't know how you two feel about it, but I think it's a good starting salary and as opposed to where they're at right now.
We're talking about giving everybody on this sheet a $1,000 increase.
Well, David, it's only when we not hiring, we can't keep them.
My
I
question
mean, I don't know,
is,
I'm asking you. I mean, it's a revolving door for.
I don't know if the budget can afford it. That's my next question.
I mean, I'd like to see it tapered somehow. I'm all for getting the new ones up. I don't know that, I mean, I would feel more comfortable with maybe 37.
Okay.
That'll work.
But then you have to do something with the other, I feel, as well. You can't have a new person coming in and in a year they're gonna make just as much as somebody that's been there
That's what
for
I'm
several
asking.
years. And I think that's what we need to figure out today, take a look at, don't, and then come back with some numbers.
I just need to know roughly a starting point, because we have to taper it up for the ones who have been here, since 2015.
But I don't think a $6,000 increase for everybody is appropriate either.
So I just kind of
Something
get
is
an idea
appropriate.
of where to start, so I can start building the numbers, see what the budget is saying.
I like 37 as a starting point.
You've got some people already been here, 1, 2, 3, 4 that are within that range.
So I'm saying that we need to figure out a way. I mean, if you could come back with a plan and taper it, get a starting point and then taper it for the years of service, maybe. Come up with a scale of some sort. How does that, that would match something here. Does that sound fair, guys?
Yeah, I did. And I think you have a base to build on there.
Yeah, we're back up.
And that's what I was just looking for, a base, so we can figure out where
Because
to go from there.
I'm with you. I've always thought they needed to make more money. I've listened to the radio for years and I know what kind of calls they take. It's a tough job.
My other question is going to be then, are we taking that increase all the way from lieutenant up to director or on the clips of lieutenant?
I would come back with some different options. Now, the corporals and above recently just did get an increase when all those promotions happened. So it's something we definitely look at, but we need to find that base.
Once
to
you get
start
those
with.
numbers figured out, then we can, I think we can look at it.
And also see what the budget can sustain.
Exactly. That's the most important thing.
You'll take a look at that and then also get it to the 911 board to discuss.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anything further on that? Thanks, everybody. Okay, we will move on to number 3. Review, discuss updates, recommendations, and options regarding redistricting. Who's up? But
I don't know.
I can answer hopefully whatever you have.
Is there options? I guess that's my first question.
what can we and can't we do? What's our, like you said, option?
So options on magisterial districts, we do have some options that are available, whether you'd like to do that or not, that's up to the commission, of course. You're allowed to have as few as 3, you're allowed to have as many as 10. We currently have 6.
Personally, right now, I think we need to worry about polling places because of this election in January and possibly look at that in the future if that's even something we want to. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. No, and I think we're gonna have to end up adding at least a couple
As
of
long as we're
precincts.
within,
Yeah, that kind of
and actually, I was thinking about this, if we shrunk it by one recently.
Oh, yeah,
So we're
understand.
actually just,
We're gonna end up breaking
Game-
even and going
Right.
back to the way it was, you know, yes.
I want to show you all a few things here.
Maybe too, Mike, whenever you get to that point, like what we were discussing in the hall, a lot of the decisions that we kind of made, you know, together when we look at stuff, there's only one way to go. So you all are very welcome, of course, to look at the same scenario, but hopefully he can show you a couple where it's like, it's rock and hard place and you have no choice but to either create a new one or absorb it into another. So you'll see those kind of circumstances.
and it's not gonna be a,
Right,
hardship on the voters. That's the important thing.
right, absolutely.
Let me start with this map. So this is the precincts that Mr. Spires and I have come up with. The darker lines you're seeing are the new house lines. So Harrison is now divided into 4 house districts. When they did this map, they didn't use current data. They didn't use
That
current
they had,
municipality.
that they had and said they did.
They didn't use current municipality boundaries.
What's that little carved out section there?
I'm
Mike,
sorry.
that they,
Down here,
yeah, well, precinct that get,
That's open now. Isn't that open now?
yeah, that's open now.
So near Rosebud Plaza, that they're
Yeah.
inside Clarksburg city limits,
Yes.
Hillendale, that
Yep,
area there.
Yep. So I want to show you the municipality lines. So these dark green areas are Clarksburg's current municipality boundaries. Their intent when they drew these house lines was to follow a municipality boundary line, like down in here. They didn't at all. This area here's been annexed in. They've got a house line cutting right here.
Now, let me ask you something. Well, we would have sent them that too, though, but with the city, I mean, did they not get information?
You know, I don't know who was supposed to
Well,
update
it
the
doesn't matter. We
Census
gotta deal
Bureau.
with it.
But one thing to state here is I now have info to update the Census Bureau. And I'm going to make sure that these municipality boundaries are updated first of the year. In 2015 through 17, somewhere in there, I sat down with City Bridgeport, City Clarksburg, and we went over their boundary lines. There was a big question with Clarksburg on this north line right here and coming down this side on what was correct. Bridgeport was pretty good because Bridgeport started small and they annexed in outside of that. So it was kind of, they went with the parcel lines. Clarksburg didn't do it that way, or they hadn't annexed in. So I found a really old Clarksburg boundary map that's over in your all's conference room. That's the oldest map of Clarksburg that I know of. I'll never get rid of that map.
We
But
need to scan it, put it in something.
yeah, that's the oldest map that.
Is
and
it
so
scannable or is it on the wall? Is that the one on the wall?
It's on the wall.
Oh, that's, okay.
I took pictures of it and it has meets and bounds on it.
Well, I'm serious.
And
We need to get
there's,
something done.
that's the oldest one that I know of, other than maybe in the courthouse in Virginia, when we were part of Virginia. But anyhow, so we use that map as if anybody can prove it wrong, please do. But that's the only thing we knew to use. So the old municipality boundaries from 2010 that the Census Bureau had, they didn't get any of those updates. I didn't send it to them. City of Clarksburg didn't send it to them. I don't think anybody knew to. I don't think anybody got a request from them. It wasn't on anybody's radar. City of Salem had their boundaries surveyed, which was really nice. We were able to I was able to just go around the city of Salem, drop them in, and you can see that, you know, they annexed in a lot of areas up here. But when they drew this house line,
They didn't fall.
they went with what they had previously. And this is a perfect example of, so right here is this dark house line. I took the voter registration roll
and geocoded all the addresses and plotted them on the map. So we have people that live right here that are technically inside the city limits of Salem, but are in a separate house district than the people that live right here.
And what's separating that? Is there a street or a stream or
The black line is, who knows?
do those not have to follow geographical like everything else does?
They should have, those black lines should have followed those municipality lines, perfect, but they don't, so, and there's nothing we can do about it. So, John and I looked at this.
Well, if we'd have had stuff sooner on it.
That's why we got this stuff 2 months late, after it had been kicked over a year from the original intent of doing this stuff.
So, when John and I looked at this, this was one of these where we have no choice. You cannot create a precinct here for 4 people.
Right. And you really can't because it's too small, so no matter what.
Legally, you can't.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
and the same goes over here. I can't make this a precinct with 0 population. So what we've done, let me turn that boundary line off.
So you just move that.
We've added those people that were right here into precinct 133, but there's going to have to be a note on them in John's system that says
They're eligible to vote inside a city.
they're eligible. But those are some of the folks that are now going to have to.
Those are the ones we got in and out.
And they're likely the ones too, they're not gonna be happy campers. When I said, hey, we'll affect about 130 people, they'll have to go somewhere else, they would be 5 households out of that 130 that there's only so much we can do. We're trying to make it easy and not change stuff, but sometimes we have no choice.
But you can't. I mean,
Right.
that's,
But they're just challenged this time, next voting. The primaries where they would be affected versus the primary, they vote either general, they would only be able to vote.
right, it's the
Right.
city.
Right. It's only for the city as well, would affect, yeah, city elections. And increasingly over time, Clarksburg's gonna start piggybacking on our elections. I know Stonewood wants to. I haven't heard from Salem, but let's say they would want to also. That just adds another layer to it that you really have to make sure all the ballots are correct depending on where the people are voting. And, Salem would have city council members on it, but obviously Clarksburg would have Clarksburg city council members on it, that kind of thing. So, there's just only so many options you have.
Is this something we can go back at a later point and straighten out with the
I wish we could do it.
Well, your angle was of giving them the correct data, but how long would that take to fix and get to what I think he wants to get to, where, hey, it's actually correct?
It may not happen for 10 years. It could happen as soon as the Census Bureau.
See, I wish we
updates.
could have went together as, the state, the Clerks Association or somebody if they'd have had time, or even the
Yeah.
commissions, gone together and
Yeah.
done something.
Oh.
But you didn't have time.
No.
And their constant annexations.
And to make you all
But
feel a little
we didn't
bit,
get, he didn't get that stuff. Nobody got this stuff in
So you
time
didn't
to
have
do
an
anything.
opportunity now, that's just here you
I'd love
go.
to file something and say, but what are you gonna do? You got an election next.
this is also not just a Harrison County problem,
Oh, it's everywhere.
everywhere. It
Some counties are worse than us.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, looking at Clarksburg, I'm not trying to take up too much time, but what John and I did, we had a lot of areas here that, same as Salem, this is your house line, this is your city line.
It's just like it's within reach.
It's like you can tell what they're.
It's like is there a mistake somewhere?
And I even,
Yeah, but it's not average. You know what?
I know.
I made a call and I said, this is obvious intent. And they're like, doesn't matter. It does not matter. I'm like, okay. It is what it is. So we've
But I don't think it's
done the
bad
same
we
thing we
thought
did
it
in
was
Salem. Move people left or right
No,
side of the line.
make light of it.
So what we did, if you see this 114A, this was one precinct.
You got divided by that
highlighted
house
area.
line.
It got split. So these folks will all go to the same polling place they always went to. They're just going to be a different precinct because of that house line being split. That happened in several areas.
That's nothing we haven't been through before.
Yeah.
And those don't still do.
We looked real closely at, I think was there an area here, John? Yeah, 135. Not really.
Some of those, it's the difference of, well, we used to go to Sardis, now we have to go to Wilsonburg Breach.
See, that's.
Like, and it's a haul, depending, but
Yeah.
sometimes you have no choice.
That's why you.
And-
Do
early
any of these precincts cross delegate lines?
I'm sure some of them had to adjust a hair where we would have to adjust precincts, like the 114, or what was the one that had the A and B, the 114 A and B. That one got completely cut in half. So you had a couple options. You could make a new precinct and then send these other people, wherever 61 goes, let's say, or you could send them where 59 goes, or you could send them where 134 goes. But geographically, it's a haul for them to do that. So it's like in that situation, we kind of put our heads together. It's like, well, we do technically have to create a new polling location, but at least those 400 people or whatever, they still get to go to the same location. So you're not affecting them. And
They're gonna
otherwise,
go to the same location, but vote for delegates and
Correct.
another.
yes. So when they would go there, you go to the A table.
Just
if
need to
you're
make
driving
sure
on
the
the other
voter
side of
goes, gets the
town,
right ballot.
yeah, I go to the B table, and that way we make sure we get our correct ballot.
And that should be because the way it's done now electronically.
And we have an electronic system. Once we get our e-poll books going, we'll be on all this here in the future. But there will be a time where we'll have a system in place where it will take out the human error of making sure the person gets the right ballot. If we had that in place right now, this would kind of be a moot point. It wouldn't really matter. We could kind of do our dream scenario of having, as long as the numbers work, having 50 precincts. Because it wouldn't matter. They go in, they definitely get the correct ballot. But that's a part of why we decide to do it like we do it, is that people aren't perfect and we need to do our best to make it easy for them so they don't make mistakes.
So how, let me go ahead.
No, I'm ready for questions.
I'm just still trying to wrap my head around people going from one precinct to another precinct to vote for somebody to go to Charleston.
Well, and it's
In the
really,
same place,
it's because
two
of
different
the,
people, is that what you're
right.
saying?
The precincts are technically separate. Really, it's the polling location that's located within another precinct. You're allowed to do that. So that does sound a little fishy, like you're thinking, like how if you go to the same place, that's an exception. If you're allowed to do that.
Yeah, they're gonna say, I want to vote for that one.
Right.
or-
No, and that's one of the reasons why we try to minimize it, because if Mike goes to table A and he's like, I have David on my ballot, and well, David's not on mine because I went to table B, no one knows why, they're yelling back and forth. How come I don't get to vote for him like I want? That's why we try and avoid this stuff at all costs.
But we do have it.
But we do have it. Yeah. And this is the main one where it was like, okay, we send all these people where they go to Sardis now, they have to go to Wilsonburg, and it's not close. Or you could, I guess, the other option, maybe if you can find a location, or hamstrung a lot of instances.
So you're
Where would we
not
send
gonna
them
have
to vote?
Sardis at all?
No, we will. We
Oh,
will.
okay.
It's just a matter of, do you send these people, like right now, let's say they go to Wilson Grade School, we can keep them going there. We have to technically create a new precinct. We have to technically have a table B, but they'll still go to the same place they've gone for 30 years. Or they're gonna have to go on the complete other side of town. Why do I have to? I mean, you know as well as I do. They don't understand why. And it's like, well, there has to be a line.
You changed something, that's the whole
Yes.
thing.
So how many house districts do we have that in issues? Clarksburg's a house district, right, on its own?
Basically, yes, they attempted to do that, was the intent, was to have
but
Clarksburg as a house.
Some areas of Clarksburg are.
Yes, and some aren't. Yeah. And same with Bridgeport. It appears they kind of tried to get a lot of Bridgeport to have its own house district, but then,
Yeah,
Where's that line?
the dark green line is the house line.
Is the house
Yeah,
line.
let me turn these municipals off there. Makes a little more sense.
So when you
Over
see
here.
10, 121, 120, 122, those are all in that house district. And I'm not sure the number, but let's say it's 71,
What is that,
66.
61 or 63 that's up there that's split? Is that
63.
63 is split then?
Yep, and we moved all those into this is all inside the city limits of Clarksburg, most of. And here's another nice little fun fact.
I'm just trying.
No, that is Clarksburg. That 66, that's the city limits of Clarksburg, and yet it's what would likely probably supposed to be a Bridgeport house district, but they just drew the lines wrong. Because they didn't follow the city boundaries, like Mike was saying, where they're, whatever it was they followed or
Oh,
however old
that's
it
over
was,
on,
they
And this,
missed all of that.
this highlighted area right here is kind of a moot point because that's the FBI.
Okay, okay.
There's nothing there to vote.
We got
on.
lucky in situations like
Yeah.
that. We're like, oh, that's a big chunk. Well, it's the FBI. Fortunately.
The problem we did have is
Right in there,
when Clarksburg annexed in the FBI, they did a little road here.
right?
It was the old road before the 4-lane was put in. And then when they put the 4-lane in, Bridgeport annexed the 4-lane. So they overlap. But they had, Bridgeport's got a industrial park out here somewhere.
Yes. But
That-
that's
that
not
is-
in the Bridgeport district now,
It's in Bridgeport city limits,
but it's not in their house.
not in their house, no. There you see,
So-
that's their industrial park.
And that's why they may feel like, why am I even voting for this person? But that's the lay. I mean, that's how they.
That's why I'm saying it's gonna get confusing
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
people that,
there's only a few people.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the rest of them don't have.
and if we're talking 10 years and 10
I hate to
years
say
of
it like
growth,
that.
that's a,
Oh, it's,
it could be, turn into a bigger issue.
once
Down
we
there.
submit the precincts and municipality boundary lines to the Census Bureau, any product they put out will reflect this.
We hope.
So what's gonna happen is they're gonna go in to look at these house lines at some point, and I would say it'll be the next few years, they're gonna look at them because of annexations and all that, and they're gonna change all this to match what we have. We hope. It will definitely happen by the next census, but that's 10 years.
So how many precincts are affected? You know, is it still only around 130 voters?
Around 135 voters that will have to go to Building B when they used to not go there. They're actually different location.
I don't know that we got a count.
No, we honestly, the way we started because it was so
It's just
daunting.
moving lines in the existing precincts with the exception of.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
you know, you create one, you eliminate this,
Right.
and it just kind of worked out to, we tried to keep them at the same
No,
number.
we were so overwhelmed at first. I was like,
Oh, I know.
show me what we don't have to touch.
Right. No, I
And that
think it
made me
came
feel a
out,
little
I mean,
better
it's awful,
to
but it's still
start.
better than we thought it was gonna be.
Yeah,
Oh, it is that way.
this map started out all red when John and I
Right.
started, and the ones that we didn't have to touch, I turned green. And I said, now, as we go, we'll turn them green when we're done. So,
So that's, I just want to make sure Secretary of State doesn't have any issues crossing.
They,
Vote.
these lines, they're not being crossed by the definition of being crossed, so they are okay. You're never allowed to, you can't, like that 114, the reason we had to create a B was because you couldn't have 114 and have it divided by that line. So that's why. So yeah, I'm positive that we're following it to the letter, that we're doing it as is said in code.
We were very fortunate before, having one house and one Senate
we
district.
were.
We were, I mean, and we were one of the few counties that were that fortunate.
And if they would have added updated data, this would have been a 2-day project.
Well, I appreciate what you guys have done. I know it's been, hadn't been good.
It's been a lot heavier.
We had at least a late
I
evening.
understand.
But no, you know, to Mike's credit, I have no idea what we would have done, how long we would have had to wait if we'd had to get in line with W.Va GIS that's doing how many other counties?
27.
27. We have Mike all the time. Mike works with me late on a Friday because I asked him to. And so, I mean, we're very fortunate that we have these capabilities. I'm confident that we're getting it right and we need to. So
In magisterial districts, when do you think you'll have something on that?
magisterial, that's what we were talking about.
I mean,
We
we're
can-
okay right now with the,
We are,
okay,
yes.
with the population.
And then magisterials are based on the actual population of all of the
And they have
people.
to be pretty much even.
Yes. And Mike
Still are.
says, we're pretty darn close right now. There's no firm language on what the deviation needs to be. Some people say, well, 10%'s good, 5's even better. He says we're already under 5 currently, which means there's less than a 5% discrepancy of population variances in the, that's pretty darn
That's-
good considering we haven't touched them. And that's even better than what's usually recommended to try and get to. Because some places have, okay, they're really weighted in a bad way, they need to fix it.
This is the nice software we bought.
Oh, was that it? I was asking him about that this
Yeah,
morning.
this is it. So these numbers are hard to see on your off screen. The lowest is 10,239, which is southwest. And the highest is 11,515, which is southern. That's your variance. That's really not out that far, but I want to show you what it looks like on a map. So these are what we started with. This was me getting them a little closer. And you see this dark line right here? I don't know, this is hard to see, I apologize.
No.
I moved this area into this area up here, which is northern.
So that section of the magisterial got adjusted to put that
And I
portion up
also
there
took,
to follow the house line.
And we can encompass all this within one notice.
took this
I think we
sliver here in. That was the first proposal. And the second proposal, I took it a little bit further. And I took a little bit here, and I also took a little bit of this one and moved it into southwest. And the Bridgeport, Sparksburg area, I think I went down 79. This one is the one where the numbers are the closest.
In these instances, when you're talking about, we don't have a choice, right?
Well, in
We have to
magisterial
follow the
districts,
magisterial with the new house line.
in the magisterial districts, we do follow the lines where we needed to, but they also had to follow precinct lines.
Right. Yes, yes.
So we did this first,
Right.
and I got them close, and then we got to look at the precincts.
Right.
So now I need to go back and adjust these just a little bit. I was telling you this morning, if I move people from one to the other, it's going to be 200. It's not going to be thousands to get them in line with the precincts. And you can see we have, well, this is not the precinct map. Look at this. This is where you can see it better.
That's something you always want to look at. So we definitely did, obviously, with like the three of you, for example, to see, like, let's say he's in North Urban and you're in South Urban and Mr. Treetops is in.
When I'm
We make sure that none of you all are affected too. So, because that's one of the things, that's the biggest pitfall when you move one of these. What if someone is current office holder, did it put them somewhere else? So you want to avoid that as much as you possibly can. Or you don't want, let's say you two are in different districts now, you don't want to change the line and all of a sudden you're in the same district. So those are things there. I have an email from Secretary of State's legal counsel. They're still not decided on what that means, but we just know we want to avoid it.
Right, and we did.
Yeah.
And by adjusting these lines, this purple straight line is going to have to follow this line, this jagged line. There's not a lot of people that it's going to move around. I think getting it where we got it was a good, okay, that's a good general. We need to stick with that as best we can. And we did. And now we just need to move it just ahead. And I can give you some new numbers once I do that, but they're not going to change. We're already so far, we're tight enough now that after we do this, we're still going to be well within the threshold of 5 or 10%. What was it, 10% we had to do?
10% was a recommended.
Yeah,
Well below that.
We'll be plenty good.
How much is this available to the public right now?
It's out there, but they can't see it. I mean, unless
can't.
they can see it if we want them to see it.
No. Yeah, we haven't voted on it yet.
Right, right. So, there's nothing.
We got notices to go out.
It's just a map that's out there and it's a work product at this point.
I understand, I just was curious
Okay.
how much of it was available.
I mean, the
How much
current
is
stuff is
available to
available.
us?
To you, you can see it now. You should have been emailed Mike's if you haven't.
I don't necessarily see a problem with having it
No, I don't see
available.
it.
I didn't either.
I'll make sure
I'm
you
not
get
saying
that.
But I don't see that it matters. I think the downside maybe is that it's available. You'll get maybe irrelevant questions because people don't know what they're looking at. But I say if that's
I
the
think
worst
we'll
thing that
just wait.
happens, so, it could be out there.
I would wait.
Thank you.
You got a notice process you have to go through.
So when do we have to have this to Charleston?
You all's deadline is January 21 to sign the order. I'm not sure about a whole lot of nuts and bolts beyond that because it's kind of your gig.
The public hearings we have to have.
I believe just one. And a public notice ahead of time is a 30-day period, Trey.
I was looking at one of them last night, I
Yeah.
pulled it up.
So we're kind of kicking that around, but I believe it's a 30-day
I think
notice.
sooner rather than later, as far as I'm concerned. And just me, that's just me talking. That gives us plenty of time. If there's an issue, we'll take care of it.
Yeah,
And
We're
obviously,
gonna be going by these for the election on the 22nd, right? I
correct.
think we ought to get
That's the
everybody.
idea. It won't affect that election other than the 130 people. It obviously won't them. But for everybody else, it won't. It'll look like another election. They go, they get their ballot, no matter where they go, they get the same ballot. So it doesn't really affect them other than the 135 people that we choose based on our plan to affect. So I guess based on that, because I've heard that maybe we have X amount of time to execute this plan. I'm not sure about that. If that's the case, then maybe we do the order in a timely fashion, but we don't perform everything by the levy. I don't know if you're allowed to do that or not, but maybe we just make sure we get it done before the primary and we're okay. I don't know.
I think read the picture one time. We'll look at the Secretary of State, we'll comply with whatever. The members is required.
And I have some other stuff in our notes here too. I'll try to compile everything for deadlines and notices.
And whatever we need to do, or
It's pretty much all commission duties. It is. So I'll just.
So are you
talk
trying,
about
are you
that
trying to
stuff.
throw it in our lap
I just
now?
did my best
Is that
to
what
outline
you're,
everything.
is that what you're saying?
Hopefully you won't make me work much harder. But no, that's why. It was just kind of, this is basically your bailiwick. I know a lot about it, so I'm helping.
If you have a contact at the Secretary of State, the one recommendation I would have is just ask them for, I'm sure they have a form timeline for publication notice, get a copy of that.
Okay.
Take it from there.
Just like for us not to do a public hearing like some of our PSDs do. At 4:00 in the afternoon is a little saying, don't show up.
I think the first thing we need to do is you guys get whatever lines you need to move and what we need to do, and then we'll get a hold of somebody at the Secretary of State's office and find out what we need to do next. Does that sound like a plan?
I'll have these magisterial lines done by the end of the week. That won't be a problem.
I know it's been a job. I know, there's, I appreciate it again.
Yeah, Friday evening's worst case scenario, but they'll be done this week.
Thanks again, guys. Anything else?
Sue, I'd just like to know that John and Mike, they've worked a lot on this.
There's no doubt in my mind, Rocky.
They put a lot into it.
No doubt in my mind.
We're appreciated. I know that a lot of counties have been struggling to figure this mess out, that the guys in Charleston don't seem to think there's any effort to do stuff when
It's a mess.
they do this and it just happens.
On one more note, I've got.
But thank you, Rocky.
Got the photography for 2021. Finally have it in-house. It's been crunching since Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I started hoping it would be done and the server wouldn't be going slow today. It's still not done. It's at 50%. So I'm going to give that another week to finish crunching. It's taking that big image and taking little tiny snapshots of all of it. So when you zoom in, you get detail on the map. I'm going to give it another week, but it's working. I've looked it over. It's darker than last year's, but it's okay. It'll work for what we need. We're out of a state contract, so we may need to talk about that next in the spring.
State only did it 2 years.
They did it 3. And I think this was the third.
Was our third.
I think this was our third. So I don't know what they're going to do. I haven't got an update yet. But we'll talk about that when it comes. I just wanted to give you an update that I did have the photography and it is doing its thing.
Is it hard for us to go back and look from year to year to year? Is that just too much information?
It's a lot to keep on the server. I have all those years and the assessor's office especially uses that a lot. Was there a trailer there in 2014? What was there in 2015? And I'm able to drop in a year and I have a map that has them all on it. It's a lot of space. So if it's something you need, and you can call me as inconvenient, I can make that happen. It's just a lot of space. Yeah, it can happen. There's not one out there. That's all I have. Well, thank you.
Any pitfalls you see coming?
No, I think we've laid it out pretty well. I think we understand what we're attempting to tackle here. Technology is awesome when it works good, and Mike's working it good, so I'm pretty confident we're doing well.
We're gonna try to get this instituted for the 22nd or leave it alone till.
I'm afraid not to do it for the 22nd.
It's really a matter of what we have to do, I guess.
Yeah, I'd try to, let's shoot for the 22nd, check the notice requirements, but let's try and get ahead of it.
Secretary of State doesn't push y'all with.
Well, and the lift for my office is obviously we need to notify all of these folks that are affected. And that's part of the thinking as to why, well, if we can wait, maybe it's better to, but we can get a little closer and see.
I don't
It's
think we can. I
125
mean, we had
people.
this conversation, I think, with Deke before all this started,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken. And that's the attorney for the Secretary of State. I just don't want anything to mess up the 22nd. That's all.
No, there's very little time between January 22nd and May the 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. So I mean, I feel indifferent about doing it. I really do.
And that's
It's
how-
close enough that
I mean, once you
you
figure out who it is, you can always print
Yes.
everything out and have it ready to rock and roll, let the orders sign.
Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.